Hello again. After I got in touch with that idea of that conference and I thought which topic I should talk about. I came to the conclusion to talk about capacity versus safety. And then I checked whether this would be a good idea under the new normal conditions, which Alex mentioned. And I think, yes, it is a good idea because we still have traffic peaks and we still have another pressure like cost efficiency or others. So change the first word of my slides, capacity versus safeties against cost efficiency or environment. You have always pressure on safety, which must be balanced out. And that is part of my daily work here in Langen. So I thought a very good idea to start with that. Next slide, please. The first two slides are not really related to ATC, and most of you know that crisis or that accident. And with slide 3, I will hand over to the ATC business, but it's for me important to start with that and with two messages. The first message is it's only a small technical part in a very complex system which fails, and that causes then these catastrophic accident. Next slide, please. There you could see the enormous production pressure which was put on the NASA team. They, behind the plan, they have spent millions of dollars, and the expectations to the NASA management, to the whole team, is very, very high. They delayed the plan, they postponed the plan, they get a bad weather report, and all this pressure which was put on them leads then to a very I would say bad or catastrophic management decision and causing this accident. And is there a relation to ATC? Is that comparable? I think yes. Next slide, please. Oh, that was too fast, but however, what are we doing? We have metal tubes, put thousands of tons fuel in that, hundreds of passengers, and then we guide them around the world through dense areas. We have millions of flights in dense areas. You could see it here for Germany from 2015, 2019. We have 10% more flights, 15% more passengers, 8% more freight, and 3.3% more ATC personnel. You could see on the picture a day in January 2008 in a populated area with a lot of airports, and there is a production pressure to us as well. And I think in all our regions where the CANSO is represented. Next slide, please. And there you could see capacity versus safety, a widespread belief, capacity and safety, you have a negative correlation. You never could win. And you could put it now cost efficiency over safety, environment over safety. It's a never-ending battle, and more or less the whole ATC community, the industry, the ANSPs are focused to that question every day. But is this really correct? Is that always a versus? When I'm ongoing now with my slides, you would get my personal opinion to that. For me, it's clear it's not a versus, but you have to follow my slides. Next slide, please. I have some sayings from some scientists, or Simon Decker, for example, is a pilot who works in safety, culture, and flying, and they are saying there is very little empirical causal evidence for high production pressure. And the relationship between safety and capacity is more complex than only a versus. And sometimes capacity increases and safety figures improve at the same time. You see here some figures from a center in Germany, and which I know very well. And I would like to put your focus on the year 2008, where the traffic is high and the safety infringements as well on a very high amount. But if you look then to the years 2017, 2018, 2019, there is also then an increase in traffic, high traffic, but the safety has improved. So the relation between capacity and safety is more complex than we should not give us an easy answer. It's more reasons to think about that dependency. Next slide, please. And again, Simon Decker, it's about culture. We are working in a business where can-do culture, can do with less, can do even with more or less, and the cost efficiency pressure. The goal conflict between safety and capacity is internalized and integrated by controllers, by shifts, by teams, and sometimes, or very often as well, by our industry partners. It's a feature of our daily work. Next slide, please. So you see we have a safe envelope of capacity with inputs from the technical systems, the weather, the staffing, bunching, etc., etc. Safety rules will not be bent or stretched intentionally. A slippage is finally not expected, but what I mentioned before, doing more with less. So productivity, capacity, cost effectiveness is always aiming for the edge of safe operation. Safety does not have to be sacrificed for capacity. Safety, capacity correspond in a more particular way. And most important, safety requires its own investment. It's not always money. Very often it's culture and management and leadership. Next slide, please. And what are now the challenges of the near future, having in mind the last slides? ATC staff are no longer really used to high traffic load. And certain skills degrade step by step. As an ATCO and the whole business, you're used to do every day the same thing again and again and again and again, and you are trained and you are proficient. And we do not know whether the traffic comes back in small steps, in one step. I do not believe he will come back in one step, but I believe he will come back in steps. So we have to invest, we have to think about to be safe, to be proficient under the new normal, and keep in mind what I said before, safety versus capacity is not the right thinking. The dependencies are more complex, and we should keep in mind all the other things, leadership, investment, and culture. Next slide. That's all from my side as a beginner or appetizer for this whole conference, and I do not know whether I have used the time exactly. However, I hand now over to Osman. He presents his slide and his statement from his point of view. Osman, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Armin, and great presentation and a great statement. And I would like to say, yes, it was a good idea. And as you personally touched on, against the background of the current situation, the question of capacity versus safety is and will remain topical. And I'm sure that we all are looking forward to find ourselves back to a new normal and more high traffic than low traffic for many reasons. Going back in the today's situation, if we look at how airlines, airports, and even air traffic control organizations react to the current situation in the area of costs, the question of downsizing or right sizing, as I prefer to call it just recently. So the topic of cost versus safety, as you perfectly touched on as well, is perhaps more topical these days. Everyone can answer that for her or himself. At least we discussed this at our last steering group, SSC steering group meeting, where we considered downsizing or right sizing, as I like to call it, as a risk that we must consider. And I'm grateful and looking forward to listening to, I think it's Doug Davis, the Vice Chair of the OSC, and Sinead McCloskey, the Vice Chair of the SSC, to talk about this. But what I would like to pass on is, and this should then pass on to the to my presentation, is as before the pandemic, the topic of interdependencies, like the capacity, cost, and environment versus safety or with safety, remains topical as such. So anyway, I mean, I'm very pleased that that you and the Kansa OSC took up this topic and that you, with the support, as you said, of your local safety team, has prepared this topic so well. It's a strong signal to the safety community and strong confidence building statement for everyone involved. So that's great. It has been understood, and we work, magic word, together to manage. As I said, now that the offsite has presented this topic so comprehensively, I decided to react flexible and agile as possible, as we are more and more expected to do. And we heard this from Alex, we heard this from Terry, and I decided to deal more with the question I have repeatedly asked in the last few weeks. And the question was, has the safety landscape changed because of the pandemic? Thank you very much. Without telling you, you found the right slide, so thank you very much. So yeah, let's take a quick look at this beautiful autumn landscape, but don't let us or let ourselves be distracted by the question of whether the landscape has been changed by the pandemic. So the question is, has it? Next slide, please. I would say you can have an argument. Some say everything is different. In Europe, there is a discussion as to whether the security goals, the current used methods and instruments are at all suitable to meet future requirements. And in particular, the many necessary changes we are facing. In Europe, there are no plans to further specify safety goals or more concrete safety key performance indicators in the European Performance Regulation. And the member of the European Commission just told me recently, safety is a precondition. There's no need for targets. I think, well, this is quite interesting. What does that mean, and how to deal with that? And what I would like to pass on is that we still do a lot the same way as we did for decades, for good and maybe for bad. We also know changes were confronting us before the pandemic, and we managed. So as far as I'm concerned, one message should be that there is no need to be afraid or to be intimidated. And the last thing I want to do is I don't want to find ourselves like, let me refer to the picture of your presentation, Armin, like a mouse in front of a mouse trap. I like the picture, but this is not the situation we will end up. Even wearing a helmet, I love that. Next slide, please. Having said this, we gained a lot of experience in development and introduction of new technologies. We have still passed on many things, such as definition of the role of air traffic controllers. We really have to challenge this in the near future when we talk automation. A couple of years ago, I gave a presentation at an SSC conference, I think it was in Australia or somewhere. We discussed the topic of automation. And I remember we really went into depth. I remember that we had a professor from the Melbourne University challenging us whether we have thought about algorithms and ethical principles and things like that. So really, it's a really challenging topic. Today, that's something we have to pursue much more urgently than we may have done in the past, and here also approach and challenge the traditional definitions of roles or procedure we have. But even before the pandemic, we successfully dealt with examples and secure the introduction of, for example, digital towers. From a safety point of view or methodology point of view, safety assessments, security assessments, already a quite challenging situation, and we managed. Next slide, please. I would love to touch on these so-called new entries. Even before the pandemic, we were asked to integrate all categories of unmanned system or vehicles safely and fairly in all categories of airspace, and we have not reached the end. We are still struggling with it, and today's answer is still segregation, which cannot be the answer for the near future. We are experiencing, I would love to call it a text. Just recently, we just opened our new airport in Berlin, and already the day after, we need to shut down the operations because of drones being operated unlawfully in the near vicinity and even within the parameters of the airport. So drone detection systems and effectively interventions still challenging for us as well as the industry. Next slide, please. Look at this. So we have introduced successfully new concepts for airspace design and procedures all over. Wherever you go, you see interesting approaches successfully implemented. I mean to say that we face new challenges, but we don't have to be afraid. We have the skills, we have the knowledge and the creativity to survive in this phase as well and to shape the future. Again, the magic word, together. And therefore, I like to echo and put emphasis. It's so great to meet together and in the consequence on the following weeks and months to agree on specific topics. We want to organize ourselves and work more closely with the safety community and the operations community on a global level as well. Next slide, please. So what we need to do, and I will become more detailed or concrete with one of the next slides, is what are the questions we need to ask? What is the target state that we want to strive for? So we easily talk about automation, we talk about artificial intelligence. So do we have a common understanding? Do we have a common understanding, as I said, of the target state we want to achieve? And then maybe much more important, how do we get there? And how do we safely manage the transition? Next slide, please. So let's challenge our approach. As we try to say, first gather a common understanding of automation. Let's try to understand what a quickly move from air traffic control, I like to refer to Alex, a quickly move from air traffic control to air traffic management would mean for all of us and how to get there. What are the basic principles or tenets of automation, safety tenets of automation? Do we really have to adapt? And let's do it if we find potential to become better and much better prepared. Nice conversation and discussion. I'm really looking forward to it. Next slide, please. And here you see the old way and the new way, whatever the old or the new way is. I would really love to see us being able to recognize what has been proven and therefore is worth to be preserved, and what is needed to be adapted or to change. And this will be difficult. We all know this nice abbreviations, KISS, yeah? What should we keep? What should we stop? What should we start? And as the safety community, during the recent weeks and months, we did revisit our strategic objectives we had defined in the beginning of the year when we had no idea about the pandemic and the extent and the impact of the pandemic to come. And we revisited these principles, and we have understood there is a need to refocus and to reprioritize. So we need to do that. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's about change management, and I heard a lot from Armin talking about culture, talking about our people. I still believe, beyond all technology, it will remain our greatest asset, and I do believe in the principle that people create safety, and therefore we need to have a good look, a good understanding, and of course the right, I would say, effective culture, safety culture, just culture in place. And I'm absolutely convinced that safety management was and will remain to be a kind of change management. So it will be of great importance to have an effective change management, and I'm convinced that safety management, as I said, always represents change management, and that we are therefore moving into the same direction already, and that the close cooperation will be the key to success. Next slide, please. Here, as I promised, I would like to touch or address a few specific points, and I need to check some notes I made on how to adjust. And here I'm thinking of two timelines. Of course, we are urged to concentrate on the now and here, if I may to say. So we have to recognize what needs to be done most urgently now. And Alex spoke about traffic coming in waves. We need to understand this as a risk. We briefly touched on the way industry organizations are reacting by downsizing. We need to understand what does that mean and how we can protect as organization important investments on one hand and a safe conduct. We need to understand, and it's so easy to talk about. I saw the picture Armin used, and it reminded me to a model developed by Rasmussen, the operating gradient and all the factors with their implications on where we stand as an organization. And we can talk about that, but do we have the right understanding, the right methods and tools at hand to really manage, to really steer? And beyond all presentations, I think it's all about talking to each other, making things transparent and inviting the various perspectives. All our organizations, with all the people we have, we do have at hand all the experiences and all the perspectives, and we need to invite, to listen, to learn, and then to take the right decisions. But I get the feeling that we need to organize this process a little bit. When we go to the second horizon, this is what I tried to touch on before. Where do we want to go? We really need to understand the target state we are striving for. Again, what is our understanding of automation in our specific context and navigation service provider? How do we understand air traffic management different from air traffic control in the future, as Alex referred to, as well as one of the biggest challenges? And much more important, maybe, what will be the role of the human being in such a defined, and we like to call it joint cognitive system, where we have a clear understanding on how to divide the labor between the human and the machine. And I can't wait to listen to Guadalupe, the chair lady of the Human Performance Management Group, who will surely touch on this as well later on. How can we strengthen our resilience and our ability to react more flexible and safely to unforeseen things in the future. And I like this picture I put here on the right side. It's not my invention. It has been stolen. But I think it's good. We live in a VUCA world, which means it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's more and more complex and ambiguous. But there are answers to that, and I think we touched on them already. Next slide, please. So for us, it's important to understand, and we all refer to that, and it's really an appel, as we say. It's important to understand that we can only do it together. We have to join forces, skills, knowledge, experience, and that we develop a common understanding and shape our future together. And here maybe is a typical picture, a number of safety people helping the ops again over another abyss. Please bear with me. I couldn't resist this to show this picture, but why not? With this, thank you very much for your attention, and I think let's have a break again. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Osman, and thank you, Armin. Wonderful presentations. You really set the stage for a great forum, and so I'm eagerly looking forward to the next parts of our program. However, we have the benefit that we are running a bit ahead of schedule, so I would like to ask the events team to bring both of you back on if you could, and we can ask some questions. I'll pause for a second to let Colleen introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Colleen Harisco. I am the Operations Program Manager at Canso, and I am delighted to be with you today and with these fine gentlemen. As was mentioned before in the previous remarks, this is the first time that we've been able to get together like this. As Terry said, we weren't able to get together in Bucharest. We weren't able to get together in Kenya. So thank you for your time and your attention and bearing with us for this 4.5-hour forum. There's a lot of great information to come, and we're really looking forward to it. So thank you very much, Shane. Oh, and if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in at any time, and we'll try to get to them as the day rolls on. So if you do have questions, please type them in the question box, and we will get to them. So thank you very much. Shane.
Thank you, Colleen. And so, Osman, Armin, I know that this is a bit extemporaneous. However, I think it's important for the communities to hear from both of you and your visions for how we tackle some of these things that you brought up. I know that we have a planned session later on in the program for specific questions and answers, but I would like to hear, if you don't mind, how do you see the ops and the safety programs working together to tackle some of the items that you identified, whether it be safety versus capacity, whether it be flexibility or adaptability? So Armin, I'll go with you first for your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think what Osman said, and as well Alex, automatization is the key for ATC, for operation, for production pressure, to get some tasks done by a computer or by a machine or by a good designed HMI, to get it away from the ATCOs, from the flight data assistants, from the supervisor, whoever is involved in the process. And to balance that out with the safety process, to work together very close with the safety guys, the 4I principle, to check every decision, to hear all the things a coordinator or an executive is doing. So here we need, or I have the feeling we need the safety guys very close with us to help us to say, this step is a good step forward for you, and as well checked from our side. So in this part, we need the safety guys for our progress.
Thank you, Armin. And so Osman, your perspective on this, please.
So that Armin is representing operations, I'm representing safety, although in the in the same company, he perfectly described the situation, and that it's all about. It's not one and another division working for itself, following whatever kind of objectives or targets. It's a common effort. So we have understood there must be a change, or something new should be implemented. And from the very first beginning, the safety people are involved and trying first to understand what is the objective and how can we support the transition, what might be the risks and how can we mitigate. But I think the most important attitude a safety person should have hold up is that it's not about you can't do that, so a kind of red card, like in football, stop, you can't do that, full stop. It's about helping how to do it safely. So this is what you want to do, this is what you want to achieve, let's try to make it happen. So this is the approach of my safety people, if I may say so, and this is very well perceived. And this is a kind of cooperation we are happy to live here.
That's great. Thank you both for your perspectives on that. I think Colleen has a question for the audience for both of you.
Yes, thank you, Shane. An audience question came in. First of all, thanking everyone for the great presentations. Excuse me. And the question is, during the pandemic, as a safety issue has arisen while operations in air traffic control or human factors issues, that most controllers' performance, because of the low traffic counts, it's just not very busy. So are there any procedures or guiding materials that could be used by ANSPs to overcome that, I guess, skill decay that's caused by not being able to work as many airplanes, as much traffic at a time? So what do we do to combat that? And I know that some of the conversations later in the day will also speak to that. But you guys, since you're in the operation, I think have a really, really good frontline view to that. So I'm going to go to Armin first.
I'm not sure whether I get the question right, because you're not. I could not hear you always by 5 by 5. But if I understand it right, the question was, what are we doing to keep the skills of the controller under COVID-19 conditions at a high level? We are in the beginning of the process, but we will have simulator runs. We have them already created, so the controllers are forced and by free to do simulator runs to be proficient. And we have a very strict and planned opening scheme to check that all controllers get the more or less same amount of working in their controller positions. That is a little bit difficult to union rules and those things and from the national authority, but the two main messages are keep them in position even with low traffic and create a simulator training to keep them or to try to force them work under busy conditions.
Osman, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I have to say that boredom or monotony wasn't new to us. So wherever you go, when I talk to my global colleagues, there were always some areas or times in a week or a day where this occurred, and it's not automatically ended up in the kind of skill degradation. And we need to understand the term skill degradation, whether we mean or talk about technical skills, or whether it's more about self-confidence, or routine, where you build your self-confidence on that you can manage a number of traffic at the same time and things like that. So having said this, before the pandemic, we already had prepared things like trainings like mental flexibility, stress management, things like that. So because we had understood that it's not only about technical skills. And it proved again to be the situation that we didn't see a degradation of technical skills. We more saw the situation that people weren't used to so much traffic any longer, and therefore the limit where they reached their individual capacity was lowered. And together with the operations, so with our heads of centers, we decided to come up with a campaign, with an awareness campaign, and it was important here again to work together, so that there were one or the other input from the safety department, the other input from the operations, but in particular the backup. So when we tell the people, if you reach your individual, let's say, capacity, level, which is lower than it was the year before, don't be afraid. Talk to your supervisor and just accept a number of traffic. Don't put anything, something at risk. Please stick to the procedures. You do not have to accommodate every specific or special request which may come from an airline or a pilot in order to keep a good eye on your capacity level. So this is something we agreed on, and this was very well perceived by the operations. So again, trust building, perhaps another element of culture, how to approach things like that. Thank you. Back to you, Colleen.
Thank you, Osman. I think Shane has another question.
Yeah, just because we have an opportunity here, I would like to get your perspective. We've already dealt with the pandemic, and we've been dealing with it for quite some time. And if we were just simply to look forward, from an ops perspective in the CANSO community and from a safety perspective, what is your top concern moving forward? And so, Armin, I'll start with you from the ops side. Your top concern as we move forward into what is the new normal.
Yeah, one top concern. I don't have one top concern. Under the present circumstances, we are looking forward to bring for our customers, for the airlines, the best route they request from an environmental point of view, but as well from a cost efficiency point of view, to stay as long as possible on the top of descent, to have the shortest routing. And for a monthly period or for the next year, how long could we work under those circumstances? How long could we provide the shortest routing and the best routing? If the traffic come back, we must go back what Osman mentioned with that checklist. We come back to a more stable and structured process. Where is the point where we switch back to normal operation? And another top concern is, I mentioned it before, it's cost efficiency. To balance that out with the amount of upgrowth, the amount of people working in the process, that is as well things I'm focused with every day.
Thank you, Armin. Osman, your top concern or concerns as we move forward?
So I really like what Armin has said. So let's say, as being a member, as Armin, of the DFS management team, we are not allowed to focus on the one or the other thing. So we need to have and to keep the entire picture. And the economic pressure is enormous, and therefore it's not only one top concern. It's about and maybe this sounds too general, but it's about doing the right things now. So first, do you have the money to pay the salaries? Do you ensure that you have the people you need? And as we spoke, even if you have 40% of traffic as we have in Germany, you need up to 60-70%, depending on which center you work, at what center you work, in order to accommodate the traffic. Because it's experience. We experience it in high peaks. So therefore, this is. We could talk about specific topics as I touched on with my slide when I said, okay, let's first keep everything safe here. but at the same time, we do invest hundreds of millions of euros in important investments like the virtualization of controller working positions. Yeah, we build data centers in order to find some relief. We need to be prepared in 23, 24 in order to cope with traffic that comes back and will increase again. Yeah, and as I said, to make everything safe, we need to have all these these challenges in mind and to work at so many frontiers, if I may say, yeah, to put it this way. So you cannot allow yourself to focus on one specific topic, at least as a safety manager.
Excellent, and I know that's not an easy question, you know, because as we often hear, we can do anything you want, we just can't do everything. So when you try to nail it down to what's the most important, it becomes a give and take a discussion. And so I really do appreciate your willingness to be very flexible and adaptable to this ad hoc question set. And we will see more of you later in the day. So thank you very much. Osman, did you have something?
There's one thing we definitely should focus on, and therefore, maybe by accident, maybe not, I proposed a break instead of this session. Now I'm happy that we had this session, but it's about the people. It's about the people. Don't forget, it's about the people, and this should remain, whatever we talk, our greatest concern and biggest important topic we need to look at. Thank you.